Welcome to our robotic tutorial. Today, I'm very excited because we're going to be building our nerf shooter. And these are the components that we need to build our nerf shooter. We have our tray here, we have our control board, and we have various hardware, M3 hardware, and standoffs that we're going to be using. Next, we're going to have our servos. So we have a big one and we have a small one, and these are to move the axis and also to feed the nerf darts into the flywheels, which are going to be controlled by these motors. And we have the flywheels right there. Lastly, we have our LCD display and all the various 3D printed parts that are going to bring our robot to life. So this is our control board, also known as a PCB board. So it stands for printed circuit board. And so what it is there's an IC chip that is kind of like the brains of our chip. And we have a communication to talk to the USB port, so we can talk to it via your computer. And then we have various GPIO pins. So these are called general output and input pins. So as you can see, they're labeled here from D13 all the way to analogs A2 to A0. And we also have our joystick pinouts, and we also have our LCD screen pinout. We have a relay to control the high power, and that is tied into this terminal block, which we're going to put our flywheels on there. And we have various power jacks to provide power to the board and also power to that high power voltage. All right, for this next step, we're gonna be using 5 standoffs. So these are 35 millimeters, and we have 3 6mm standoffs. And so on this board, we're gonna leave all the corners unpopulated. So let me show you what that means. So we're gonna tie this up to here. So this one requires a long standoff. And then we can tie it on the bottom. And then this guy requires a long standoff, like so. I might use a tool in the back just to screw that in. Okay, so these standoffs are going to be what we're going to use to mount our various components. So these 4 are going to be for the servo and the LCD screen. So again, we're not going to populate those corners. We're just going to populate everything else. So in this one, we have the 4 holes here. We're only going to do these 2 and this one on the bottom for the smaller one. So again, tie it up like so. Okay, like that. Okay, so your board should look like that. So the next step here, we're going to attach the tray to the bottom of the board. So all the exposed lead in the back do not touch the floor and don't get damaged. So for these guys, we'll need a small standoff to complete that set there. And we need 3 standoffs to do the bigger ones. So I believe it goes better this way. So there's a direction of it, so make sure the hoses line up as you put them in. So I'm just gonna put one through here, and then we're gonna tie a giant standoff like so. And this allows us to protect the underside of the PCB board because we don't want it to get damaged. All right, so now that we tied that in, we can tie the last one. There's this guy here, and so forth and so on. So all the step is inside the manual, so you'll have that. And then we don't need this one, we need a small one, which is this guy right there. I think we just need to use a screwdriver to screw this in. Again, it doesn't need to be super tight, hand tight, and then plus, you know, a little bit of a clock spin should, you know, make sure it's snug. Again, these are plastic parts, so we do not want to break the plastic parts. So yeah. So your finished product should look like this, with all these smaller standoffs here, and all the bigger ones are populated on the other boards. So now we want to put in our wires on here. So notice on the PCB boards we have A5, A4, V, and G. And then here we have A3, A7, A6, V, and G. So these, we can use our jumper wires to plug it into there. So maybe a little difficult, but I like to stack them together as closely as I can and then push them through like that. So make sure they're seated properly and they're held together. And then same thing with this guy. Make sure that your wires are straight as you plug them in. And if you have trouble with this part, you might want to unloosen the standoff so it's easier, but you should be able to get it through like that. Shouldn't be too difficult. I'm just gonna use this guy to push this guy in. There you go. So it should sit properly like that, and then so forth and so on. Okay, so now let's plug in this guy in. So notice that in this case, our G is our ground. So looking at our back of our LCD screen, we could read that. So see, G is going to be for ground. So that's going to plug in like so. You got to make sure the pins are plugged in correctly, or else your LCD screen will not work and you can damage the board. And for here, we want to make sure that the ground right there matches the ground on the board. So I believe it's going to be ground should be here, like so. Perfect. Okay. So make sure all that ground is ground and everything matches. So your thing should look like this. So now that we have it connected, we can now attach this to the board like so. So it should go in pretty smoothly. Perfect. Okay, and you know, the purpose of the joystick is for you to actually control the robot. So you have the up and down like this, and you also have the button here. So the button, we're going to use that to fire. So now that is nice and secured. I'm going to add one more to the back, like so. Okay, so now let's talk more about the LCD screen. So the LCD screen stands for liquid crystal display. And so this we can program to tell us information about, you know, the robot, such as how much nerf bullets are there, what angle are we shooting this at, you know, stuff like that. So we have this going. Okay, perfect. And then we're going to put in the last two screws, like so. Okay, perfect. So one last screw. Okay, cool. So your thing should look like this. So next thing we're gonna do is we're gonna mount the servo motor to the standoffs here. So you see this wire here? We're just going to shimmy them down. You might have to like twist it, go down, and then twist it back up to make it fit. And then we're going to use these M3 10mm to tie them down. So again, we want to make sure that it's not too tight but not too loose. We don't want it to fall out. So hand tight plus one, maybe half a turn to get that tight enough. Okay, so these servo motors are going to control this direction. And so notice that the servo motor has a wire coming up. So this wire, notice that has three colors. So the orange here is going to be for our signal wire. So we're actually going to be sending commands through it. The red is actually our power. And then the brown is actually the ground. So this is how exactly we are going to use our servo motor. So now let's tighten this up. Good. So in order to plug this in properly, so I'm just gonna go up here. So you see how these numbers are located here. So you have D13 all the way to A analog 0. So, and here on the bottom, there's G and V. So meaning that this whole column is gonna be ground. This whole column is gonna be V. And then we have our digital inputs and also our analog outputs. So in this case, since orange is our signal, we actually want to plug it into our D8. So you gotta make sure that we plug it in correctly. So that plugs into D8. And notice that the D8 is gonna be orange, and then red should be in the middle, and then brown should be at the end. And this loose wire, what you can do is just shove it in here, just make sure it's nice and tidy. And so your servo looks like that, and everything's nice and tidy. So next we're going to be attaching this servo horn. So this horn actually attaches to that servo. So here we have our holder. So we're going to, so notice that the direction, this is going to be pointing outward. So notice that the servo horn is going to be facing this way. And then we're going to plug in our cover right on there. Boom. So next thing we need is we need a nut, and then we need a 3mm screw in the back bolt, and we're just going to bolt it down. And so for these are friction fitted. So we actually want these to be fairly tight so it actually grips onto that servo horn. So make sure it's not crazy tight, but you want it tighter than the other ones, because we don't want the servo to move. So again, grab a nut and then grab a bolt on the other side, and then we're going to screw it down. Okay. So your servo horn should look like that. Perfect. So now what we're going to do is we're going to do it for the other side also. I'm going to grab a couple nuts. I think I only need 2 for that one, and then 3 here. Okay. So now this side here is going to be facing this way, so we want the servo horn to face that way. And then we're going to put our servo cover on here, and then we're going to put in our bolt on the other side. And then again, we want this to be fairly tight, but not crazy tight, because we want there to be a friction fit on our servo. That already has a bolt in there, so it's just going to tighten it down. And then lastly, we got this guy here, and then we want to tighten this guy down. Okay, perfect. So it should look like that. So servo goes on the bottom, and then servo goes on here. Okay, for our next step, we're going to be mounting the micro servos on this guy. So notice that this piece here, we have a cutout for the nut to go on. So we actually want to mount this guy this way, and we want to make sure that the white piece, or the white servo, right, the actual rotation, is actually flipped this way. Then we're going to take these guys, these are retainers, they go on like that, and then we put the nut in the back like so. This one's a little tricky, so if you have trouble with it, you can have a friend help you out, or your parents. A little bit tricky, but once you get it, you get it. Okay, I might need an extra time for this. What helps me is I can rotate this guy like so, and then this clips on the front like so, and that should screw in like that. You should feel it bite into it. Nope. There you go. So you'll feel it bite into it. And then you can adjust this to make it look straight. And then we wanted to tighten it. Again, make it look straight. Like that. So this just holds the serval in place, like so. So we're gonna do the same thing on this side here. So put our bolt through it, put our bolt through this guy, and then we want to put the nut on the back side of this guy. This guy requires a little bit of patience, a little bit of time. Again, you might want to get your friend to help you if you're having trouble with it. But essentially, once you get it, come on. There we go. Now I just need to push it in. There you go. There we go. And again, you want to keep this straight on this end. As straight as you can. Okay, I didn't get it straight enough. Okay, there you go. So it should look something like that. Okay, and then we're gonna do the last one here. So again, we want to make sure we have that it sits properly in there. Retaining clip. We have our bolt through it, and we have a nut on the other side. So this one's easier. The outside is easier than the inside, but once you get it, it's pretty quick. So again, stop it from rotating. You put your thumb there and just tighten it. There you go. And then the last one, put the retaining clip here, put this guy on there, and then put the nut on the back side of it, and then tighten her down. Okay. Okay, cool. So it looks just like that. And now these servals are retained in there, and they're one piece. So let's put this onto the side, and let's continue on to the next step. So now let's put this guy into there. So we have put our bolt through it, and then here we could put this guy through it, and then so for this particular step, since this housing is, you could squeeze it, so what we don't want to do is we don't want to squeeze it when we're installing it, because we want to keep the gap the same for the Nerf bullets, right? Because if you were to squeeze it and then install it, that gap becomes smaller, and that it could jam the Nerf gun. So actually, I think what I would like to do, I think we could put these nuts in first, like that, like that, like that. Cool. And like that. So now when we install it, we could come from the bottom. Come from the bottom, and then come from the bottom. So again, we do not want to squeeze that frame. We want to keep it the same, you know, Sometimes what I like to do is I like to push on it and then install it. That way we ensure that the frame is opened. So now for this guy, let's put this guy in here. And let's put the nut through it in the back. Like that. So before I tighten it, I'll move it to, I'll push with my index finger. Oh, there you go. I'll push with my index finger to make sure that I get the most amount of spacing. And then now we can install the other one. So let's put this guy in here. Put this guy on the bottom of that. So before I tighten it, I can push this frame out. All right. And lastly, we can install the last one. And then put the last one in here. Perfect. So in this step here, we're going to install the servo. So notice that the nut goes on the back side. So we want the servo to be facing this way, like so. So I think this one's easier if we just put in the nuts first, and then we can bolt it down from the bottom. Like that, like that, like that. And then again, we want the, like that, and then we can bolt it in from the bottom side. So again, if you have trouble, you can get a friend or your parent to help you out. But yeah, click on it like that. And lastly, we have this piece here. Put your finger there, and you can bolt it up like so. Bolt it up like so. This one might be trickier one because it's far in there, but a little bit of patience. Get it done. So maybe I can put this guy here and then put it into there. And then just slowly make sure it bites, and then there you go. So your finished product should look like that. Let's put this right here. Okay, so now we can join our main platform with this guy here. So if you look at the back side of this, you'll be able to put 2 nuts on there. So I don't know if you're able to see it, but you're able to put 2 nuts on there. And this way, we're going to be facing this way, and we can attach our nerf like so. So this one, we're going to have to come from underneath here. Grab this guy. Grab this guy. Okay. How to do it on screen. Okay, so once it bites into it, you should be able to get it. There you go. Okay, so that's one. And then the other one should go down from here. There you go. And then that should, there you go. Perfect. So it should look like that. So now we're going to be making the trigger or the load. So we have our servo horn. We're gonna put it inside this servo cover. So notice how this guy pops up and your servo is gonna attach like that. And that is going to attach to this guy like so. And then you'll need 2 more nuts. Attach it right there. And then you're gonna put a little bolt through here. And that's gonna get tied up like so. And then we're gonna tie this guy. Again, put it through here. There you go. And then we're gonna put this last nut in the back and tie everything together. And then here, we're gonna put our nut into there. And that's going to tie this guy. Gonna thread this guy all the way down. Make sure that goes into that nut. So grab onto that nut and then you can tighten it like so. So it looks like that. So now we're going to be doing the load servo. So grab our servo horn here, and again we're going to put it into the cover. So servo horn goes right there, and then we're going to grab our orange cover, and then we're going to put our nut through there, and then our smaller one here, and we're just going to tie that up like so. Perfect. And then we're going to do another one here. Make sure it gets tied up like so. So it should look like that. So now we're going to take our acorn nut. So it looks like a, I don't know if you can see it. It looks like there's a dome on there. So this is going to go inside that spot right there. And then we're going to grab our piece here. Notice the direction that this is facing. We want it to face this way. No, same direction. This way. So notice that these two are facing opposite direction. And then we're going to grab a 9mm, 10mm, and we're going to put it into there. And we're just gonna tie this up. So your piece should be able to move like this. If you cannot, it means you're too tight, and there should be no side wiggle or minimal side wiggle. There you go. So that's very important. If it's too stiff, then your shooter won't work. So again, same idea. We're gonna use our, just go like that, tie it into there, and then use our, tie it like that. So again, it should be free floating like this. If it's not, that means there's too much friction. Put that right there. So now we're going to install the motor onto the PCB board. So you see there's a terminal block here. So we're going to use our screwdriver to loosen the terminal block. So this might be tricky, so you might have to tell your parents to help you out. So put your wires through the terminal block, and then now you can tighten it. I like to get it nice and tight. And if you did it correctly, you should not be able to pull this out. And then you do the same thing on the other side. Again, put the wires through it and then tighten it like so. Tighten the other side too. Okay, perfect. So now we want to plug in the Arduino and plug in our power source. So I'm using a wall outlet, but you would have a battery pack. So that's what we want to plug in. So next things first is we need to download the Arduino IDE, which stands for Integrated Development Environment. So we're going to go to our Google here. We're gonna go to Arduino download, and then we're gonna go to download IDE, and then we're gonna click it download here. So I already have the Arduino IDE, so I do not need to download it, but you're going to install it yourself. And when you open up your IDE, it should look like that. So you have your main code and you have your function here. So some things that we want to do is we want to go to tools and go to board, and then we can go to manage our board, and then not here. We can get rid of this guy. Nope. That's not what we want. We're gonna go to port and pick the right port that the USB is on. Next thing we want to do is we want to make sure that the processor is on at Mega 328P, or if it doesn't upload, we can use the bootloader, old bootloader here. And secondly, we want to pick Arduino Nano. So if it's not the Arduino Nano, we can go to other board selection and port and pick our Nano there, and it'll give you this ports that you could possibly pick. So I'm gonna pick Arduino Nano at port 3. And so your Arduino IDE is set up. So next thing we want to do is we want to go to our USB drive. We're gonna open up the nerf setup, and that will bring up this guy here. And so we want to select all, copy, and paste this guy. So to upload our code, we simply have to go to upload here. So when you upload the code, 3 things should happen. Okay, so it says we don't have the liquid crystal library. So if you don't have the liquid crystal library, we're gonna go to our sketch and we're gonna go to add zip library. So add zip library, and we're gonna go to the USB drive that we have. So I think I have it here. So you're gonna click on the liquid crystal library master and open that, and that should import the library into your sketch. Next thing, we're getting an error, says there's a no member. So we want to change this to a begin. So the reason why we have an int there is because depending on which version that you're running will determine like which version that we're going to be using. So in this case, we change it to begin, and then we click upload. So 3 things should happen. 1, the liquid crystal display should display hello world. 2, the motor should run for 2 seconds. And 3, the servo angle should be set, if it's correct. Okay. So I don't hear the motor working. There you go. So we're gonna click on there. Next thing we wanna do is that we're gonna look at the LCD screen. So depending on how, depending on your screen, it could be lighter or it could be brighter. If it's too dim, what we can do is loosen this guy up. And there is a trim on the back. And the trim allows us to set the brightness of the LCD screen. So just gonna loosen this guy up. So don't lose these screws. You should be able to take it out. So you see there's a trim button in the back. So we can take our little screwdriver here and see how we can change the brightness depending on how you want it to be. So I think I like this brightness. So once you set it once, you don't need to set it ever again. And now you can re-tighten up the Arduino IDE like so. Okay, I don't hear the motor working, so it might be an issue here, but let's continue on here. Okay. Good. So now that everything is all set, so now all the servo angles are set to 90 degrees. Next thing we want to do is we want to open up the serial monitor, and we were able to see the screen. So now if I were to move this guy up, you can see the number are changing like that. And we have this guy, and then if we click on it, we should see the number change like that. Okay, so confirm that everything works, and we'll go from there. So, okay, I'm gonna try to upload it one more time to see if it works. Okay, so now that we have our motors working, and we also have the hello world here, we can put this piece onto here, like so. So again, we want to be sure not to move this by hand. So sometimes you can't get it to hit. Now, see how this is not parallel? That is fine. So we do not want to move this by hand to fix it, because you could damage the motor. We can always fix it through software. So here we have our bolt. So we can put this guy like that. Okay, perfect. I think it's tied up here. And now next we have this guy here. So this guy can go to right there. So again, we might not be able to get it to 90, but we can get it close enough. We could always fix it through software. See how it's not parallel to the floor, but that is okay. Because sometimes these the servo teeth, they don't mesh properly. So you might be off by a teeth. So hence why we can't get it to mesh properly, but we could put this last piece in there. Okay. Perfect. So now we can put our motors in. So motors just go inside here, like so, like so. Cool, perfect. So we can tie this one here. So this axis here, this motor, is going to be our pin 9. So again, we can go from the back and we can tie this to pin 9, which is there. So fire servo is this guy here. So the fire servo is going to be pin 10. So the one closest to the platform. So again, orange is going to go to pin 10. That's going to go there. That's going to go there. And then lastly, we have our load servo. So this is going to be our pin 11, which is going to go there. So we want to make sure that everything's plugged in properly. So see there. Lastly, we want to put in our wheels. So put in our wheels like that. So when we put in our wheels, we want to make sure that they're parallel to each other. See, we want to push this in so that both of them are parallel to each other, like that. Perfect. And they can spin freely. Perfect. Okay, so now before we install these guys, we want to make sure that this guy for the fire, we want this guy to be behind the arm, like so. Behind the arm, like so, and then clip it in, like that. And then this guy is gonna be on top, like so. So now we're gonna have to do the calibration. Okay, so now in order for us to do the calibration, we need to put in our 5 bullets. So notice that from here, this bar is too far from the nerf dart. So what we're gonna do is we're going to open up our load setup. So load setup. So open that up. And copy. And we're gonna open up a new sketch here. So obviously this is at 90. So we can change this to, let's say, 85, and we're gonna re-upload it. And then we should see the arm go down when we upload it. So, no. So I'm gonna try 80. So the better you could do this step, the better your Nerf gun will work. So see, lower it. So it's still kind of too high. Ooh. Still kind of too high. Let me try 75, maybe. So re-upload that. let's try 70. So I think it might be too high. Okay, so 70 is now you're crushing the dart. So 70 is probably too high. So we can go to maybe 74. There you go. So you kind of want it just touching, right? Just touching like that. So that's perfect. So now we're gonna save this 74 to here. And then we're gonna take out one bullet. So take one out, shoot. So now we wanna move the arm down. We can go, let's say, go to 55. See how that works. Okay, so now that is a little too much. So let's maybe go 57. No, how about 59? Let's go with that. So 59 seems to be the sweet spot. No, I could probably go a little lower. So 58. So that is probably perfect. So now let's shoot this guy out. So now we want to go to record that number, which is the same. I'm just going to try 42. See how that works. That looks perfect. And then let's try, take this one out like that. And let's try 25. See how that works. That looks pretty good to me. And lastly, we can throw this out. Try 8. That looks pretty good to me. All right. So now that we have these angles saved, so I'm going to save this file. Save. So now we can call this load angles or whatever we want to call it. Doesn't like that. Doesn't like spaces, so we can go that and save it as load angle. Okay. So next thing we want to do is we want to test the fire angle. So go here, we're going to open up the fire angle. Copy, paste that again. So we can copy and paste it. Just find an empty sketch. Screw up a new one here. Alright, and grab an empty sketch. So 90 looks okay. So let's upload this guy. Make sure 90 looks okay. So fire not declared. So I need to add a circle. Okay, so 90 is good, and then let's try 20 since that's what we have. and we should see the bottom bar move forward. So we don't want it to touch. Right now it's touching, so that is not good. So we can dial this back to 25 and see where that gets us. So 25 is probably right there. So save this as 25 here and then save it. Save this as fire angle. Again, get the space bar. Okay, save that. So now that everything works, we can go to our, lastly, we can go to our nerf gun. So open up our nerf gun sketch. Okay, perfect. So let's copy and paste this guy to a, I'm just gonna load this up right here. Go back up to here. So those angles that we got, so now is the time that we're going to use it. So we're going to copy and paste this guy that we got, come to our sketch here, and then replace this guy with that. Okay, and then lastly we're going to get our fire angle, which is this guy here. So copy that, come back here, and then replace this guy with that. So let's upload this guy, and we should be able to see it work. Okay, so now you have two options, right? Type the number of shots, so you can go up or down. It's in reverse, so I would like to, so you see how this is reversed? Up and down should be this way. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to switch this guy and this guy. So this just reassigns the pin. So re-upload it. So now we'll go up and down, so you see how it changes. So single, so now we go this way. So it seems to be stuck, so we need to see if these wheels are spinning properly. So they're spinning this way. So that will want to suck the bullet in. So we actually want it to go the opposite direction. So what we need to do is we need to switch the red and the brown pin to get it to spin properly. So I'm just going to loosen this guy up and switch it. So it may work for you, but if it doesn't, just switch those two wires and you should be able to have it working. I'm just gonna put this guy in, loosen this guy up. Perfect. And then tighten this guy down. And just to see if we did it correctly, we can just put one of these guys in, and we can manually feed this out. So that works properly. So now let's do a full system test. So single shot. This guy in there, make sure it can fall down. Perfect. So now up, down, left, right. And to fire, just click on it. Perfect. So now I want to reset it. There's a button behind here, so just click on the button and that should reset you up. So now I want to test the burst mode. So click on burst. Perfect. So now, thank you for building our kit together, and I hope you enjoy all the targets that you're going to be able to shoot. Thank you.